Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Preseason 9 League of Legends video. Today I'll be covering who I think are the 5 best top laners to learn during Preseason 9. Now this video is not necessarily who I think are the best to climb out of low elo. This would be the champions I think are the best at the top tiers, so it's not really about climbing quickly, it's about getting champions mastered that are really solid later on. In my opinion, that's exactly what you should be focusing on in the preseason anyways. It's not about climbing in preseason because it doesn't really count too much. You may as well play really solid champions and learn them before the actual season. Also, if you guys do enjoy the video, please also like and subscribe. I will have a lot more content coming out like this during the preseason, so that is something you can look forward to. But anyways, with all of that out of the way, let's start this video by looking at one of our runners-up, Camille.
Precision is the difference between a butcher and a surgeon.
Camille is a really solid champion that's almost certainly going to make my top 5 jungle list, but came just short of making it on my top lane. She is a champion that's fairly durable, but she does a lot of damage and can even one-shot squishier targets in the later stages of the game when she has her Tourney Force and a few other items. She is a champion that has a pretty low win rate at lower elos, but as you get higher and higher, you can see her win rate climb by quite a bit. This is of course because she is really strong in the right hands. When you are just learning Camille, you may have trouble in a lot of matchups, but when mastered, you will be a complete monster. One of the biggest things that sets a good and a bad Camille apart is proper use of your E ability. It will take a good amount of time to use this ability properly. You'll have to figure out your max ranges and how to jump over walls, but once you learn how to do this, Camille will become a much stronger champion for you. A really solid Camille is also going to be able to use her ultimate, the Hextech Ultimatum, to dodge skill shots as well, which is really important in a lot of matchups. If you were against something like a Jax, for example, being able to jump while he is doing his counter-strike and dodging that stun can make you easily win the matchup, but without it, it can be somewhat problematic. Of course, during all this, you're going to have to learn your max ranges of your W as well, and you must be using your Q properly on top of it because you need to wait 1.5 seconds after you use your second Q to get that true damage. All in all, Camille is a really solid champion at the moment. She's great in a lot of matchups, but she is pretty skill intensive. Although she is one of the better top laners in the game, she just doesn't cut it to make the top 5 list. Before we get into the top 5 list, we have one more runner-up, and that would be Erga.
You cannot know strength until you are broken.
Erga almost made this top 5 list because he is a really strong lane bully and he doesn't have many hard matchups out there. He's also a very tanky champion considering how much damage he does with just a Black Cleaver. That's almost always going to be the only offensive item you take on Erga. All the other ones are going to be defensive options and you're still going to output a lot of damage throughout the whole lane phase and even in the mid game. Erga is also a champion that's fairly forgiving. He's not a champion that requires a ton of skill either. He won't require anywhere near as much as the other champions mentioned in this video. As long as you're somewhat solid at landing your corrosive charge and you kind of understand how Unsealed Spellbook works, that's pretty much all you need to know about Erga. Of course you need to charge into them when they're slowed with your E ability and you have to activate your W for damage, but those things are not too hard to pull off. If, however, despite the title of this video, you were kind of looking for a champion that is a good lane bully and somewhat easy to understand, then Erga is probably the pick for you. With that said, however, Erga's not going to take a ton of time to learn. It's definitely fine to have him in your champion pool, but if you're looking to learn a really solid champion in this preseason that takes a bunch of skill, Erga will not be the champion. He is very solid to have in your champion pool, which is why he made it as a runner-up, but not one of the top 5. Alright, let's kick off our actual top 5 with, surprise surprise, Viktor.
Join the glorious evolution.
Viktor kicks off our list because he's a really strong lane bully just like Erga, but the difference is Viktor is of course AP, so he's great in AD comps, and he also scales like a monster. Erga is a champion that falls off pretty hard in the late game, but not Viktor. Viktor in fact is great at all stages of the game. In that early lane phase he will be able to bully the enemy over and over again with both his Q and his E, and in the later stages of the game he will have an insane amount of damage and can one-shot combo squishies. He's a champion that requires a moderate amount of skill level. He's harder than Erga, but he's much easier than a lot of the champions that will be mentioned later on in the video. Although at the time of this recording it looks like he will receive some small nerfs to his Q ability, he may not be able to harass like he usually did, but he's still going to be really strong in the game. To make up for this, they're actually adding some scaling onto his E ability, so his damage is still going to be insane, his Q will just be a little weaker. So as for playing Viktor, pretty much all you need to do is bully your enemy over and over again with your Q and your empowered auto attack, and then land your E whenever available. Your W ability can be pretty hard to stun enemies with if they are somewhat mobile, so you do have to kind of get used to how to use this ability properly. If you do get off that stun, you will have a lot of kill potential when you add your ultimate on top. Basically though, just spam your Q, E, and your auto attacks on the enemy champion to piss them off, and when you want to go for an all-in, use your W and your ultimate. Coming in at number 4, we have one of the hardest champions to learn in all of League, Riven.
What is broken can be reforged.
In fact, Riven is probably the hardest champion to learn in all of League. You're going to have to spend a lot of time learning how to cancel your animations because you do need to do it properly in order to dish out a lot of damage on Riven. Riven is also a champion that has a lot of skill matchups as well, so even if you know how to properly animation cancel, you need to know your matchups on top of that. When you have mastered these, however, Riven actually becomes pretty disgusting. I'm sure pretty much everybody out there has seen a really solid Riven that seems unkillable, they do a ton of damage, and you can't even catch them. Basically, when you see these, you kind of just scratch your head, say what the fuck, and ask yourself why you don't see more Rivens. Well, the simple answer is because that shit is not easy to do. It does take a really big time investment, and you will have to spend a lot of time learning how to animation cancel before you even get into games and learn matchups. In the end though, if you are willing to put in the time on Riven, she becomes one of the best top laners in the entire game, but be warned, it will take you some time and you will lose a lot during the process. Coming in at number 3, we basically have Riven 2.0, Aatrox.
I am your Retina Mortis.
He has some similarities to Riven because he is able to activate his Q 3 times just like her, and he also has a dash from his E, although he does not shield himself like Riven. Aatrox's Q ability, however, although somewhat hard to land for newer players, can knock up his enemies 3 separate times, which gives him some crazy crowd control. Of course, this ability also dishes out an insane amount of damage, and pretty much just his Q ability alone is why he makes it onto this list. He's definitely a fairly clunky champion, however, he doesn't have a lot of built-in mobility, he just has his E, but he does have a lot of damage and a lot of crowd control. His ultimate does help with his mobility a little bit because he does get some bonus movement speed, but it also gives a percentage of up to 30% AD, which is pretty insane. This ultimate also allows him to have a built-in guardian angel that allows him to move after he's dead as well. It is an incredibly strong ultimate. It will take you some time to learn the ranges on your Q and use your E ability to get you into range to land those knockups, but once you do master this, Aatrox is an insane champion. He actually doesn't have the best win rates out there, but there is a reason you see him in high elo. He is very, very strong. Coming in at number 2, we have one of the best duelists and split pushers in the entire game, Jax.
Surprise! I'm back.
Jax gets the number 2 spot because he is one of the best duelists in the game. He scales like an absolute monster and he can split push like a fiend. He definitely doesn't have the best early game out there, but as he progresses throughout the game, he gets stronger and stronger. Although Jax's kit isn't that hard to understand or execute, you do have a ton of skill matchups. In these matchups, you're going to have to know exactly what the enemy does, how often they can do it, and what you need to do to counter it. A lot of this does come down to proper use of your counter strike, but you need to know when to engage and when you need to have your Q off cooldown to jump away as well. Other than that though, all you have to do is use your W for extra damage whenever you can. You do want to use it as an auto attack reset and activate your ultimate whenever large portions of damage are coming in. You're usually going to have to be pretty careful in the early lane phase, but as you get into the mid game and you have your Trinity Force, then you can start trading a lot more aggressively. Another really big reason he gets that number 2 spot is because he can split push like crazy. He can clear up minion waves really quick when he does get a Ravenous or a Titanic Hydra, and towers don't stand a damn chance because of his passive. Jax is definitely considered a 1v9 champion because you can spend a lot of time split pushing and kill anybody that shows up to try to stop you as long as there's not too many. And for our number 1 spot, we have got Irelia.
Woe to all who would harm us now!
Irelia is pretty similar to Jax in the fact that she's a really strong split pusher and duelist, but the difference here is she's got a really strong team fighting ultimate as well. This deals some really nice damage, disarms all targets hit, and also slows them by 60% for 1.5 seconds. If this ultimate hits the whole enemy team, it can sometimes win a team fight all on its own. She's then one of the best split pushers in the game when you combine her Blaze Surge and a Tiamat item, and she's got some really solid crowd control, although somewhat hard to land sometimes from her E. It can be incredibly solid, however, because it can stun multiple targets in a very long range. Then finally, she has a really strong defensive as well, although it is getting nerfed a little bit from her W. Still though, when used properly, it can block all sorts of damage and give you some really nice survivability. Irelia's got some unrivaled mobility as long as multiple minions or enemies are nearby, and her damage is just absolutely insane, which is why she took the #1 spot. And that covers who I think are the 5 best top laners to learn in Preseason 9. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Do you guys agree with who I put in the top 5, and if not, who do you think I should have put in the spot that they're in? But with that said, thanks again guys, I really do appreciate it. Take it easy, have a good day, and peace.